on blast.
Nelson came in hot to start this episode. We're going to try to come in hot, even though I'm very tired. I'm just going to speak for myself. I'm John Chidley Hill.
And I am Sheldon Alexander. And if the people only knew behind the scenes what we need to do to get this podcast to y'all, you would appreciate it so much more. And it's okay, because we understand that nobody cares about what happens other than the end product. And I get that and I understand that. But the reality is we out here working. And so, hey, we're able to squeeze in. I think I probably got like 40 minutes here.
Let's do it
in here and talk some challenge, because it was another pretty solid episode for the most part, I'll say. Episode 12.
I mean, it's sort of the nature of the podcast, but I've got some takes from this episode.
Let's go.
Right off the hop. So they get back to the house after Kyle has won and switched to Sapphire, better known as CT's team, Uncle CT's house. Sounds creepy now that I say it out loud.
Yep.
And Nelson immediately gets in Kyle's face. I was surprised. Like, were you surprised that Nelson, like, because we'd seen that clip before. I thought it was going to be further down the line, but it was like from the jump.
Yeah, I thought definitely it would have been because something else had taken place other than just Kyle switching teams. But I guess what I didn't realize, and hearing you, I guess you didn't realize either, was I guess Nelson thinks him and Kyle are boys. And he would have preferred, this is the classic trait that we see all the time where people want a heads up, right?
Yeah.
And so Nelson would have preferred a heads up from Kyle that, hey, if you were going to trade teams, at least give me the heads up. Let me know about it. Like, I'd be upset, but I wouldn't be as upset. But we're boys. We have a relationship. At least give me a heads up. And he didn't get that. And so he's not happy.
I have to say, I'm like 90% in Kyle's camp on this.
Yeah.
Because first of all, he didn't necessarily know he was going in, because I don't think Ed knew who he was going to call down, right? Like, we were both talking about, you and I went on at length on last week's episode of You Killed It, that Ed clearly didn't have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is, for weeks, Kyle has been saying, I want on Team Sapphire. I want to be with CT. Like, this was not a surprise to the viewers. I mean, we have the confessionals and Nelson doesn't, but it's not like Kyle was subtle about his desires. Mm-hmm. And perhaps most importantly, Kyle has to make decisions for Kyle. It doesn't make you a snake if you're just putting yourself first. And like, Ashley says it, like, in confessional, that's the name of the game. Like, you got to be looking out for number one. And Nelson's upset. I mean, I guess he is heated, but like, in that moment, I understand maybe he should have been like, oh, by the way, Nelson, like, if this happens, I'm going to go in. But like, that's a pretty minor thing, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. And I think Nelson blew it out of proportion. I think it's maybe the first time this season that we've seen Nelson kind of revert back to the Nelly that we've seen in prior seasons. Like, I feel like this year he's been very calm and cool, even during, if you go back to the start of the season with the Ashley and Berna stuff, like, he was still pretty calm and cool throughout that.
Mm-hmm.
Here, there's definitely a line that gets crossed where they both now turn into the tough guy, hold me back, you know, like, okay, let's fight now, even though we know you don't really want to fight. And then it becomes ridiculous. But yeah, and Kyle's egging it on because that's what Kyle's going to do. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think Kyle can do whatever he wants, right? Like, he's well within his rights to switch teams to whatever team he wants to. And I also think that Nelson shouldn't be that mad about switching off that team and going to Corey's team, right? Like, I don't think the teams are that far off as they keep making it out to be. But
I agree. And in some respects, the team Nelson just went on to is a better fit. First of all, he's with his guy, Corey.
Mm-hmm.
They're best friends. They're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
We see at that point, Emmy is on the team, and Emmy is one of the better women left in the house.
Mm-hmm.
It's Logan seems like a good guy. He's trying hard. Big T, like, it's not that bad a situation.
Yeah. No, for
I
sure.
will say Corey came off really well in this scene.
No, for sure. Yeah, Corey was calm and cool, taking it all in. But that's, again, Corey and Nelson have figured out ways to balance each other out this season, which has been funny. So that theme continued. The one thing I would say, though, is I know CT doesn't really like his name being brought up that much by Kyle. Right. Like
No.
CT already has a bit of a target on his back, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger the more that Kyle's like, well, of course I'd want to be on CT's team, right? And run the final and blah, blah, blah. But apparently everybody wants to be on CT's team because then we get him and Emmy, right? And this I found kind of weird because it was basically CT coaching her to go down and try to come back so that she could switch teams, which I think is like bad advice. Like if you're telling someone, hey, go and put yourself into an elimination, I don't care what the scenario is, that's not good advice. And he did kind of like backtrack on it, right? And say, oh, I don't want to make it seem like, but it's like, it's not about seeming like. You are telling her to go into the elimination to try to switch teams. Like, did you find that as weird as I did?
I do find it weird, and it's also all based off of the premise that they're running the final as teams.
Exactly.
And there is no evidence to suggest that's going to be the case.
We have no idea.
Maybe it is. Maybe they do run it as teams, but maybe they don't. We just don't know.
Yeah. Then you have Amanda, Ashley, and Josh.
Sorry, before we do that, there's one point that I want to make 2 points on this. First of all, I think the better advice, if you're CT, is coach her to go break up Emerald. Right? Like, you can make your team as good as you want. Until you break up Emerald, you got a problem. So, like, be like, okay, take out, I don't know, Big T, take out Patina, whoever you want, Emmy.
Yeah.
And then replace Casey, because Casey, if you remove Casey from Emerald, Nani's going to freak out, Josh is going to freak out, Tori might freak out.
Yeah.
They lose their best female competitor.
I totally agree.
That imbalances everything.
I agree. That would have been better.
A stronger move. The other thing I have to point out is that CT is wearing his wedding band again. And I noticed this last week and I didn't get to point it out. Okay. But I want to know what's going on with CT, because we had the impression that his marriage was done, but like, he's showing his loyalty. He's showing his intention. So I'm just curious as to know what's going on.
I got nothing Chris. On that one. I got nothing on that one. I mean,
maybe our You Killed It listeners have some info about what's happening, because I have not seen anything gossip wise. And you know me, I love my tea.
There's also something else going on with Amanda and Fessy again, I guess, or I think. Yeah. I saw a tweet about it, but I didn't
back together.
I didn't dive into it.
They're back together.
I'll do more research on it, and I'll make sure to bring it up next week.
I was talking about that situation with friend of the show, Rochella Valdez, and we were talking about how they're back together, and like Amanda has it going on, right? Like she's attractive, she's smart, she's funny, she has a good job. If she wants to waste her time on losers, why is she going back and forth from Colorado to Florida to waste her time on Fessy? I'm sure there's losers in Colorado, right? Like, ladies, gentlemen, if you're going to waste your time on a loser, at least make it local so you're not spending time on planes. Like, we're in a pandemic, people. Shop local with your idiots. You know what I'm saying?
There's so much that I could say right now, but I'll keep it PG.
Okay, cool.
But yeah, there's probably more to this than is publicly being said. I'll tiptoe around it that way and didn't say that much. Sometimes I was going to say something else, and then I'm like, one of the funniest Kanye lines, and I don't even rep Kanye anymore. And upon deeper thought, the line doesn't even make sense. But when he says, and I won't finish the line, but he says, I was in too deep like Mekhi Fife. And, and if you know the rest of the line, you know the rest of the line. And if you don't know the rest of the line, Google it. But yeah, that's just what that made me think of, because sometimes we get confused, and your brain gets a little cloudy and you're not thinking straight and you're making decisions that you wouldn't normally make. But yeah, before I get myself in trouble, I'm going to move on. And
Sure.
The Ashley and Amanda conversation and Josh, right? They're talking and Bettina can hear this whole conversation. And they're basically underestimating her, and they think that Emmy should go down and Emmy should call out Bettina. And
are they underestimating Bettina, or are they correctly estimating Bettina?
so here's my thing. The reason why I say underestimating her is because like she's done exactly the same amount this season as Ashley has, and more than Amanda. Like she already went into an elimination and won.
True.
And it's not like she looked horrible in the elimination. In fact, her and Corey would have lost if it wasn't for her.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like those are just the facts. Everything else is like, okay, can you really say that even in daily challenges that Amanda and Ashley have been way better than Bettina? Or is that just reputation? Right? So, I mean, yeah, either way, whatever, they're dissing her hard and she can hear it. And this whole thing comes down to the strategy. And this is why people like this show so much, right? Because with all the twists, you got to be able to figure it out. So what's the best way to go about this? Ashley and Amanda, but most likely Amanda, is just trying to avoid going into the elimination, right? So they're worried about Bettina going in because they don't want Bettina to choose. They'd rather have Emmy go in and have Emmy choose Bettina, right? Now, you said that you talked about Amanda and Ashley. Are they underestimating her or just properly rating her? When Emmy says that Bettina's done nothing for the challenge, that annoys me because Emmy just annoys me. Emmy's being on this show is so annoying to me. And like, I'll save that rant for later because that rant's going to come later. But Emmy saying Bettina has done nothing for it. And, she did win an elimination, which is more than Amanda. So I found that weird. But why are they hating on Bettina, or should they be hating on Bettina?
I don't think they should be hating on her. I think they can correctly say that she is vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And like from a political standpoint, like from their position in the House, it is to their advantage for her to go in against them.
Wouldn't it, one might argue, and I think CT made this argument later on, isn't it to your advantage to keep her around?
Yeah.
For that moment when you might have to go into the elimination and then you can pick her to go against in the elimination?
Yeah, I think, though, knowing Amanda and Ashley, I make it sound like we're best friends. I wish. But we're making, like, knowing those two, and also Josh. Like, Josh, at least, I don't like him, but he thinks at least this far in advance. They've probably done the math in terms of how many weeks are left that they're committed to.
Mm-hmm.
They know that there's got to be, like, so many men's eliminations. There's got to be so many women's eliminations. So they probably know we just need to get rid of 2 more people and we've made it. Or whatever the math works out to be. Like, we just got to get rid of Bettina and then, like, I don't know, Big T, and like, we're in the final. Like,
yeah. No, for sure. That makes sense. It definitely makes sense. What didn't make sense to me, because I was trying to do the math, because I know that for You Killed It, we're closing in on 200 episodes.
Yeah.
And so this is the 500th episode of the challenge. And I was trying to figure out, like, does that include like all of the like fake challenge seasons? Like, you know what I mean? Like I was trying to do the math because I was like, oh, wow. Like we've really done like that much of the history of the challenge in terms of a podcast. Like I didn't really realize that.
Yeah.
Did that seem weird to you?
Yeah, it did seem weird. Like, because I had the exact same thought, like, okay, we're closing in on our 200th episode.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to show how the challenge used to be shorter seasons
Yeah.
and less frequently, because they used to do a season of the real world, pause, season of the challenge,
Yeah.
pause.
Mm-hmm.
And like I mean, they've backed off of it, but there was a year where you and I did, I think, like 70 episodes in weekly episodes in a row, and like sometimes did 2 episodes in a row because we'd like do an interview and they had the challenge all stars.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I like that they thanked us directly. I want to believe, Sheldon, that it was specifically for me and you when they went to camera to thank everyone. Like I really think it was specifically for Sheldon Alexander and John Chidley Hill. I had a question for you though, stemming from the 500
Okay.
episode. What's the all-time best challenge moment in 500 episodes? I think there's an obvious answer, but I want to hear you say it.
Like, to me, the backpack is obviously the thing that gets
That's right.
the most pub. But I honestly think Banana stealing the money is
Okay.
like really up there as well, because I didn't really think that he would do it. And normally I think that I know what's going to come, or I'm like ready for the twist and the turn. And I just thought, nah, there's no way he'd actually do that. And again, because to me, it's not about good or bad moment. It's just like, did it make you feel something? And
Yeah.
for a show that does normally have a lot of twists and turns, that one was a big one.
I agree with what you said. I would say, like, for me, the bananas backpack is number one. Johnny taking the money and running is number two. And then for me, number three is CT leaving Battle of the X's season 2 early to take DM home.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And like they're three very different moments, but like to your point about Johnny taking the money and running, like it still breaks my heart thinking of that scene, like when CT picks up DM to carry her
Yeah.
and like knowing what happened to DM.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think those are the three biggest moments, and they also sort of encapsulate what it's all about, right? Like crazy physical action,
Mm-hmm.
big political twists, and then like big feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd also say we haven't had a big feeling like that on the show, like the CT and DM moment, in a while. I guess the closest would be when Jordan proposed to Tori,
Yeah.
was sort of a big emotional payoff, but we haven't, and maybe Nelson sacrificing himself so that Corey could go ahead. But I mean, there's nothing comparing to the CT DM story.
For sure. For sure. No, I'm with you though. I'm with you.
So Nelson is coming for that ass because, which was just a horrible choice of words by Nelson. We've got the daily competition to celebrate, I guess, the 500th episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's brush contact, which personally I was disappointed was not a curling competition, but I guess that's
Wow.
Canadian in me.
Wow. For me, I really think that this challenge sounded better on paper than it did in reality, right? Because essentially, like, all it ends up being is one team's on defense, one team's on offense. Either the guys or the girls have to start. You run it to one side, and then you switch, and then the other part of your team tries to get it across, get the bags of money across. But in actual reality, it wasn't really that entertaining at all.
Nah.
Like, I was kind of disappointed. And at first I thought, oh, this is going to be cool. Like, there were moments, like I thought, the Josh stiff arm on Kyle was cool. Like, I thought, Corey deking out two dudes, as he said, he went back to his football days. Like, that was pretty cool. But overall, I mean, well, actually, it was funny when they ganged up on Big T. That was pretty funny. Like, there's some funny moments, but overall, in terms of like entertainment value, or like, how difficult it was for one team versus the next, like, I wasn't really that hyped up about it. What about you?
I feel like there should have been more rounds.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would have helped.
Yeah.
One of the issues was that these teams aren't treated equally.
No.
Right? Like the Emerald team at this point had 6 players, the other two teams at this point having 5 players each. So off the hop, whoever has to run offense against Emerald's defense is at a disadvantage because they have one other player.
Yeah.
The other thing is that Ruby, sure, they had three guys in Corey, Nelson, and Logan. Logan is still clearly injured. Like, they had to build their plan around him not being able to run.
Mm-hmm.
So I just feel like, each team getting one go on offense wasn't an accurate or fair reflection.
Mm-hmm.
And like, maybe if they'd had Emerald have to sit out a player
Yeah.
to even it up, or I don't know. I feel like we needed, and maybe for all we know, they did do it more and it just didn't really work. Who knows? It also wasn't clear to me. So the bags that they had to carry I wasn't clear if the ones that were worth $3,000 versus $1,000 weighed more, because that also makes a difference, right? Like,
that I don't
there's
know.
like a risk reward and they weren't clear on, or is it just like one has $3 signs on it and the other has a singular? I don't know.
I think, to my understanding, that was it, but I don't know.
They also, I don't think the teams really figured out the strategiges.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they, at one point, sometimes they had strategies, but at one point they gave like the more valuable bag to the like worst athlete. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, you want to get the most valuable bag across. Like, that's got to be your priority. So I don't know. It was sort of a disappointing competition. I found it disappointingly lopsided as well.
Mm-hmm.
The two things I will say, though, and then let's move on, was I was impressed with Josh and his stiff arm. And I think this competition showed that maybe CT is being too hard on Kyle, because Kyle was the only one that got across the finish line for their team.
No, Kyle did a good job.
He looked good. And honestly, I think Kyle could have done better. Like, he should have exploded out of the gate. And he sort of like stutter stepped a little too much, but it all worked out for him. I don't know. He didn't play to his speed like I would have.
Fair enough. So as mentioned, Josh's team wins, and it's pretty, like, not even close. They end up winning yet again. And this is the part that leads more to your point about the strategy going forward, right? Because, okay, you have one team that keeps winning, and instead of trying to break them up, the game plan is to build up just one of the other teams. So this all comes down to Bettina telling Tori that, hey, pick me to go in, because if you pick me to go in, I guarantee you that I'm not going to infiltrate your team. I'll stick to my team, and that's it, which is a good game move by Bettina, because it would be guaranteeing her getting to pick her opponent in the elimination, instead of just probably having to go against Emmy and not having a choice. Very smart move. Now, the smartest move to me was by Amanda.
Oh, yeah.
And Amanda gets out ahead, and she knows that Josh's team is most worried about splitting up. That's all they're worried about. And so Amanda says, okay, cool, you can put me in, but if I win, or when I win, right, I'm going to switch your team. And it was a genius play, because they can't risk it and call her bluff, right? Nope. And I don't even know if it is calling her bluff, because she probably would actually do it. Like, who knows, right? She's just focused on the money, and going on a better team might help her get the money. So, I thought it was just a genius play, when really she's probably just trying to avoid going in. But great gameplay by Amanda. And another reminder that we talk about all the time. There's so many levels to this game. So many levels. And that was just a great Jedi mind trick, that as angry as, Devin was, because he's like, oh, I don't negotiate with terrorists, or devils in this case, which is my line of the episode, by the way. He definitely had to. And he definitely lost that negotiation, right? Like, Amanda outsmarted them.
Yeah. Well, this is something that I've never understood about. Well, I sort of understand it, but people are always so scared to go into the layer elimination, whatever you want to call it. But if you have the confidence, like I'm going to go in and I'm going to come back,
Mhm.
and then like make plans based off of that, that makes a huge difference.
Mhm.
And like the only person who we regularly see be like, sure, put me in, I'll be back.
Yeah.
And then like, then what is CT? Because CT knows that he can basically beat anyone in any elimination.
Yeah.
More or less. If he's in a partner elimination, might be a different story. But if like one-on-one,
Mhm.
he's got like a 75% chance of winning. And you know, we've seen that in the past. Like a Laurel will be like, sure, like let's do this.
Yeah.
Like I've got no problem. And Jordan to a lesser extent. But Amanda is, you're absolutely right. So smart here. Just says, yeah, sure, put me in. Here's what I will do.
Yeah.
The one thing I'll say that I would have hoped from Bettina is if I hope that she was lying. Like I hope that if she went in and won, that she would have infiltrated Emeralds. Because like that's got to be the move.
That's a great question. Do you think that she was telling the truth? Do you think she would have stuck to her word?
I think she was telling the truth.
I think so too.
I think she was stuck to her word, but I think that's a mistake.
But here's the risk. Here's the risk though, right? The risk is that, you know, let's say your team loses next week, or let's say they throw it the next week. Oh no, well, they can't because it'd be a guy's elimination.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think, like, is there a retribution for you if you just did the move? Do you know what I mean? What would happen?
You've got 2 weeks for things to blow over. And like there's always something that can like blow up and like take the heat off of you.
Mm-hmm.
And you just can't let Emerald keep running the table. Like that's what everyone has to be focused on now is we need to break up Emerald. Rather than build up our teams, someone has to infiltrate. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I think the move is you replace either Casey or you replace Josh.
Yeah.
Because it'll elicit either one, it elicits such an emotional reaction from Josh that you're good.
Yeah.
Right? Like, because he will take the heat off of you because he'll just like lose his mind.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of emotional reactions, though,
I was going to say, Amanda has another smart move.
Mm-hmm. She gasses up Emmy. Like she's just there. All that was missing was her doing the Johnny Bananas stirring the pot, right? Because she goes to Emmy. And I think like her plan was already pretty good, but she was just doubling down on it, right? And so she fires up Emmy and tells her basically that Bettina wants to go against her and wants to go against her if it's a puzzle because she doesn't think that Emmy is good at puzzles. And Amanda's plan works to a T. But this is why Emmy is super annoying to me. So you're just mad. This? Well, no, not just this, but you're mad at Bettina for saying that she would go in against you because she could beat you at a puzzle while you're acknowledging that you are bad at puzzles. So what do you expect her to want to do? Like, that's what I didn't understand. Like, wait, if you're saying that you're bad at puzzles, why would you be mad at her for saying that she would go against you in a puzzle? That's what makes sense. But she just loses it. And she's like screaming and I don't even know. And I'm watching that thinking, is this real? Is she acting right now? Is she being like super extra? Is she actually upset? And I quickly switched from caring to just being like, all right, can we just get through this already? Because this is mad annoying.
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention to what Emmy was saying. Like, she lost me.
Yeah.
I also like that when they came back from commercial break, it was just the next day. Like they didn't like this is just more of the same. No one needs to see this.
Right.
I think that it was a genuine reaction from Emmy, which I find even worse. Like imagine having Emmy in your real life.
Nope, I'm okay.
It'd be exhausting. You know, I have this later on, but when Emmy wins the elimination, spoiler, she like screams and she's crying and she tells everyone she loves them and she dedicates it to her mom. Sheldon, Emmy showed more emotion in this episode than I've shown in a year. Like I'm exhausted watching Emmy. I can't imagine having such big ups and downs. Like I am, it's my
I'm
thick Scottish blood. I find it embarrassing.
I'm just surprised that people actually like want her around and want her on their team. Like she seems so annoying and also seems to be the person that, because we all know if your assumption of this is going to be a team elimination or a final, I should say,
Yeah.
there's going to be twists and turns. And we all know a
Yeah.
massive part of said final is how do you react when something doesn't go your way? And she doesn't really strike me as a person that's going to handle adversity well at all. So I don't know if I'd want to be partnered with her with $1 million on the line. Like I really honestly don't get it. But I guess CT thinks that he's like the Emmy whisperer or whatever. So
See, I gotta say, if I'm CT, I would rather to keep Amanda and Ashley together and bank on them keeping each other focused and sharp.
Yep.
Like to your point about the mental strain of being in an elimination or in a final, I think Amanda and Ashley would be better suited to keeping each other calm and level-headed. And then like as CT, your job is to keep Kyle on point.
Yeah. And I think I get it from CT's point of view. Like he's thinking that, the physical aspect of it, he needs more physicality from the women's side to match up with Tori and Casey, right? And because anything that's going to be physical, they're going to dominate Ashley and Amanda. So I understand where he's coming from, but it's still pretty weird. But I will say the best move CT made, Emmy didn't even listen to. Because I thought CT's point was, well, listen, as long as you keep Bettina around, you'll never have to go in because there's another rookie there. So pick Amanda or Big T, who you can also beat. And he also says that he thought Big T was probably the easiest person to go against, which I thought about that for a second. And I was like, I think he's right. But then I'm even more surprised that she didn't listen. Did you find that weird?
I'm not surprised just because I don't think Emmy is a great listener.
Fair.
I think so. I mean, we can skip ahead. We don't need to get into deliberation that much. Emmy gets voted in. They go into elimination. It's bombs away. Emmy calls down Bettina. I am confident that Emmy called down Bettina because she was still upset from the night before from the club, right? Like Emmy is such an emotional person. And like, I'm sure that we have listeners that like Emmy, but just as people are super critical of Josh for being an emotional person and making emotional decisions, the same is true for Emmy, right? Like you gotta be making logical choices here. And to your point, like CT gave her the path to success. Yeah. And like it worked out here, but I don't think it was the optimal choice.
Yeah. No,
I don't know that CT's logic is super sound. I know Casey and Tori are physically dominant. They're physically impressive, but they're not really well suited necessarily to finals, right? Like we've seen Casey, she's bad at math. She blew out her knee.
Yeah.
Tori, not great at math and puzzles, not a great endurance person.
Yeah, like that team is not built for a final.
No.
Right? Like Josh is not, a supreme athlete, we'll say.
No.
Josh, Devin, and Emmanuel. Emmanuel, I guess, is a great athlete. Cool. But the puzzles, I guess Devin's there to handle the puzzles would be my guess. But again, I think your point from the beginning is the best point, that there's no way that's going to be your team going into the final anyways.
Yeah, it's unlikely.
Who knows? Who knows?
I will say of the and it's funny that CT's so down on his team by moments, but on paper, you want to run a final with Ashley as your partner. She is the most proven commodity in finals in terms of like partnering with a woman if you're a man.
And could do
And
puzzles.
her wins are not flukes.
No,
When
no.
She's good at endurance, she's good at running, and she's good at puzzles. She's pretty level-headed sometimes. She can get into that space, not always.
Depends on who her partner is, I think. But
yeah. And Kyle is pretty consistently solid in finals too. He's also built for endurance.
Yeah.
Not good at puzzles, but also doesn't get mentally defeated. I know it's annoying that he's always joking, but at least he doesn't get down.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Give me someone who's laughing and smiling rather than someone who's mentally crushed anytime.
I'll be honest with you, I was crushed watching this elimination.
It was not a good one.
No, it was horrible. And the fact that they dragged it out for as long as they did, I was kind of like, I knew it was bad when they didn't really show Bettina for a long time.
Yeah.
Right? They kept showing Emmy. And then and I was like, okay, this is odd. I'm like, either Bettina's going to make a huge comeback or she's just doing so poorly that they don't want to show it. And it proved to be the latter. Because when they did show her, I mean, it was bad. Her rocket wasn't even coming close to any of the targets. When they showed the cutaway shots of Corey, he just looked sad watching, one of his allies go down in the house. And everyone's rooting for Emmy. I just found it all very, very strange. And I don't even know if I understood why Emerald and Josh's team would be rooting so hard for Emmy to win either. Wouldn't you want, because if Bettina gave you her word, right? All you can go on at this point is her word, right? But if she gave you her word that she's going to stay, then wouldn't you want her to win because she's obviously a weaker player?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're rooting for Emmy because they have a working relationship with Emmy. Throughout that, they were sort of they had a meeting with Emmy essentially where they were talking about and trying to gas her up, and you can say that they feel they can work with her. You could say that they can manipulate her. In any event, they feel like Emmy will work toward their cause.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair.
So Emmy wins. She goes back to Uncle CT. I have to say, I think it's very funny that all the cast members now call him Uncle CT, at least when they're referring to his relationship with Emmy.
Yeah.
CT's talking about how he feels a lot more comfortable with his team. But the reality is his team is 4 people now. Ruby has 5. Emerald has 6.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what the next daily is going to be, right?
Yeah. You're banking real heavy on it being a puzzle, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Because anything else, strength, headbanger, what we haven't seen yet, actually? And this might be a mistake. We haven't seen trivia yet.
True.
You would have wanted Amanda for trivia rather than Emmy for trivia. Right?
This is true. Yeah, totally.
I never said my line of the episode. I'll say it now. We skipped over it, but when they're saying the 500th episode and Kyle quietly says, "Hey CT, what was episode 1 like?" That is
it's well played. Yeah.
That's my favorite.
It was well played.
That kind of dry humor just kills me. And Ashley lost it laughing, which is also great.
Yeah.
Who killed it for you this episode?
This is going to sound messed up, but I think we killed it as the viewer. Because they should have made a better 500th episode than this one. And it's just been such a weird season, right? I feel like there's been really, really good episodes, and then there's been just duds. And by the time, this isn't necessarily the fault of, production or whatever, because Bettina put up literally no fight at all. That's not production's fault. They can't control that. But at the end of the day, we're just viewers sitting down and watching. And I was like, nah, okay, cool. What's next?
Yeah, I'm enjoying this season. But you were right.
I am too.
You're right that there's big ups and downs. Mm-hmm. And this episode was more toward the downside.
Yeah.
I I'm also finding it hard each week this season. I'm having a really hard time picking the MVPs, which is, dare I say, the ultimate first world problem to be like, oh, I'm having such a hard time picking an MVP on my podcast with my friend about a reality TV show. But no one's like crushing it, you know? Like, I could make a case for Kyle, who I thought had some good one-liners and like looks good in the daily. We could make a case for Amanda.
Hold on. Like, really, you just don't want to pick Emmy?
I mean, there's no way I'm picking Emmy.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. You know, CT got what he wanted. Mm-hmm. Amanda, I guess, got what she wanted. She just didn't want to go in.
Yeah.
But, you know, like there's no one where I'm like, oh, this person's running the game.
Well, for sure. I think for Amanda, right? Like she understands kind of what we were just saying. It's not like the Ruby team with Corey and Nelson is like horrible. No. Right? Like that's not a bad team at all. Corey, Nelson, Amanda, and Big T and Logan. Like that's not that bad of a team at all. It's not like that team is terrible. So I don't know. And she has a pretty good relationship with those dudes. So yeah, I mean, great move by Amanda to avoid going in because again, that should be the goal. Avoid going into the elimination. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I still haven't named an MVP. Let's say I agree with you that it's us, the viewers. I will say I'm interested that to me, we truly don't know who's going to win this season. Like it is, I'm not sure I've ever seen a season so wide open, so late.
Agreed.
Right. And like part of it is we don't know what the format's going to be.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that, right? Like among the men, I guess CT's the favorite. And I guess among the women, Ashley's the favorite. Maybe.
No, I don't know.
But it's wide open. It could just as easily be Corey, Casey. Nelson, Kyle. Yeah. Casey, Tori. Like it's, I don't know. It's intriguing.
Agreed.
And that I like. So good for us. Where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter at Shell Alexander, on Instagram at Sheldon Alexander, and like and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and especially the YouTube page, you know, so you support. You can see our beautiful faces, you know, all that fun stuff. But we appreciate however you listen.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at JChidleyHill. And until next week, this was You Killed It. And I'll say it this time. A rare John occurrence. You killed it. I feel like that's a good one.
I approve.
Thank you.
On blast.